Shabbat Shalom, family. Good to see everyone here. Hope you're doing well. Well, recently, the Pope came out and he criticized Donald Trump and the war. And Donald Trump, in turn, threatened the Pope with violence. Now, the Pope was supposed to visit the United States this year. And after that threat, he canceled his trip to the United States. Now, do I care about the Pope or Donald Trump? Hell no. I don't care about either one. But it just goes to show you how deep the divisions are between Esau. The house of Esau is definitely falling. It is so badly divided, it's not even funny. And, I was even reading how a lot of MAGA, they are now walking away from Donald Trump. In fact, Donald Trump told them off the other day over there on Truth Social. So it's a lot of divisions going on. Now, no, I don't care about the Pope or the Catholic Church. Aren't they the ones that gave the nod for slavery? You know? And Donald Trump, we already know how he feels about us, so do I care? No, but it's kind of fun sitting there and watching these 2 just absolutely trash each other. Now, I knew Donald Trump would be mad, but I did not think he was gonna, threaten violence on the Pope. But he did. He did. Okay, so let me go ahead and share my screen so we can get started. Please give me a 1 if you can see my screen. Okay. Thank you.
Attacks on civilian infrastructure is against international law, but that it is also a sign of the hatred, the division, the destruction that the human being is capable of. And we all want to work for peace. People want peace. I would invite the citizens of all the countries involved to contact the authorities, political leaders, congressmen, to ask them, tell them to work for peace and to reject war always. Thank you very much.
The White House threatened the Pope. So, Pope Francis is the first American born Pope in history. He was chosen by the highest profile Catholics all across the world to be their leader, and he has a position for life. He's also pretty young, too. So, it's like they're going to have to deal with him for a while. It also turns out that he's pretty based, honestly, right? Like he's against a lot of the negative things that the Catholic Church has done in the past. And I haven't heard a take from him that I thought was awful. So he's probably the most progressive pope that's ever existed. And the runner up for the most progressive pope was probably Pope Francis, who was literally the person right before him. So Pope Leo is using his office, I guess you can call it, to call out injustice in the world. That is what that is meant for. And being that he's American, he has a lot of things to say about American politics. Like he's criticized the vice president, J.D. Vance, who was a self-proclaimed Catholic in the past before he was Pope. And now that the United States is waging an illegal war in Iran, he has some things to say about it. And just so you have an example, God does not bless any conflict. Anyone who is a disciple of Christ, the Prince of Peace, is never on the side of those who once wielded the sword and today drop bombs. Military action will not create space for freedom of times of peace, which only comes from the patient promotion of coexistence and dialogue among peoples. Woke, woke, woke. So, despite the fact that the Pope is an American citizen, it's looking like, from reports, the White House had officials press the Vatican and warn him that if he continued to criticize the US government, that visas involved with him and his entourage may be revoked. And again, reportedly, the Pope was so disturbed by this that he canceled his trip to America, the place that he's a citizen of. There are some private letters from the Vatican that do confirm this to be reality. So it happened. They're that bad. And look, I don't understand at this late stage how anyone can believe that Donald Trump or any of his affiliates represent Christ's teachings in literally any way. Donald Trump sows division, hatred, war, and violence. That's just objectively true, even compared to other presidents. So if you are Catholic and a Trump supporter, how do you square this? I'm legitimately asking, please tell me if you are. Also, how do you square the fact that you aren't liking, sharing, and following right now? Making videos for you guys is my full-time job. It doesn't pay that much money. Or if you want to support me in a different way, you can also do that by listening to my music, my new single, Miss Your Body, out on all platforms. You ain't think I rap, but I do.
Hey, everybody. It is Friday, April 10th, 2026. This is Gen X Speaks. Today, I'm going to talk about Donald Trump and the Pope. And the Pentagon and the Pope, I guess. I'm not exactly sure where this came from, but apparently the United States of America has threatened Pope Leo and the Catholic Church. Now, full disclosure, I'm an atheist. I am a baptized Catholic. I grew up loosely in the Catholic Church and here in the United States. When I was about 20 years old, I took a good look at it and decided, yeah, this is hypocritical. I'm not really into this. And I got out of it. I really don't, I became not much longer, probably 10 years after that, I became an atheist altogether. So I don't really hold the Catholic Church in high esteem to begin with. Although I will say I would invite Pope Leo into my home any damn day. This guy is different. I'm not condoning the really evil and effed up things the Catholic Church has done throughout its history. But if there's ever been a time in my life where I feel like there's a halfway decent Pope, it's this guy. He is an American Pope. He's from Chicago. The first American Pope, I might add. And Donald Trump has threatened him. Has basically threatened his life and has threatened the stability of the Catholic Church. Now, the thing I want to point out about this is that this is surprising, but it's not surprising because I've been saying for a long time, the Catholic Church in the United States is likely to break off from Rome. At least the way things, if they continue the way they are. There are a great deal of radicalized right-wing Catholics. And it sounds like it's not hyperbole when you look at how many Catholics are in the Trump administration doing his bidding. That's just an example. I personally know a number of Catholics who would be willing to do the bidding of Donald Trump, including in my own family and friends I've had. They've gone completely over the deep end. And I think there is a concerted effort here in the United States to radicalize Catholics so that they fall in line with kind of the evangelical set in this country. And I think, honestly, if it continues like this, there will be a break in, I'm not going to say the Catholic Church will be completely out of the United States, unless, of course, we really do have Gilead. But I do think that a lot of people who are Catholic today will become something else in the future here in America. But talk about some batshit crazy stuff, man. Just because he doesn't like the things that Pope Leo said about him. That's what this is all about. And in my opinion, it's just another inexcusable piece of Donald Trump and his administration. Anyway, I don't know what to make of it. I don't. it's just another example of the insanity that is this administration. And I mean, I don't think I would hold any weight in it, but the Pope has canceled his trip here as a result of it. Understandably so. Why would he? You know, it doesn't seem safe, does it? In my opinion, I think King Charles should cancel his trip here as well. Why give this motherfucker any time of day? I'm sorry. Every world leader should just blow off Donald Trump and say, yeah, you're not a serious president. You're not a serious politician. You're not a serious person. Why am I going to waste my time talking to you? It'll be him and Bibi. Anyway, y'all have a good day.
I'm sorry, but this is so insane. Do you remember a couple days ago how I made a video talking about how the Pope was very courageously going out and speaking against the war in Iran and against this sort of just wild bombing and killing of all of these innocent people? I said it was courageous at the time, and that was before I knew about this crazy shit.
There's new reporting today that the first American pope may never return to the U.S. while the president is in office. The Free Press is now reporting on a tense meeting that happened back in January between the Pentagon and the Vatican. Pentagon brass reportedly lectured the Holy See's ambassador to the U.S. about remarks the pope had recently made that they viewed as hostile to the president's policies. That's according to both Vatican and U.S. officials who were briefed on the meeting. So they reportedly warned the Vatican that the U.S. has the military power to do whatever it wants and that the church had better take its side. But based on comments this week, those threats didn't seem to impact the Pope.
I mean, seriously, first of all, Pope Leo, kudos for making the speech that you did on Easter Sunday after all of this happened. Second of all, who the fuck threatens a pope? What is the matter with these people? I mean, Pope Leo, welcome to the resistance and all, but in a normal world, you would not need to be here. This administration has lost its mind, and if you're still supporting them, so have you.
The Pentagon has threatened the Vatican with violence. So, hold on to your rosaries while I tell you about this. As you well know, Pope Leo has spoken out against Trump's war in Iran, and especially about Trump saying that he was going to end a civilization. In response to that, high-ranking officials at the Pentagon summons the ambassador from the Vatican to the United States. His name is Cardinal Christophe Pierre. He is French. That will become important in a second. In this meeting, it's reported that Elbridge Colby, who was the Undersecretary for Policy at the Department of Defense, told the Catholic Church the U.S. military can do whatever it wants, wherever it wants, and the Catholic Church better pick a side. Okay. And then another high-ranking official who has not been named yet brought up the Avignon papacy. This refers to a time in the 14th century when the French monarch sent this dude to kill Pope Boniface. The French monarch took out a hit on Pope Boniface because the Pope had crowned Louis IV of Germany as the new Holy Roman Emperor, and the King of France wanted it. So that dude got a bunch of what they called adventurers to kidnap the Pope, torture him, imprison him, and eventually he died. Directly following the death of Boniface, the French required that the Pope live in Avignon, which is a region in France, for a period of time. I think it was like 8 popes worth. Okay, so to Catholics, invoking the Avignon papacy is a threat to the Pope. It's a threat from a nation saying, hey, remember what happened in the 14th century when we sent someone to kill the existing Pope and then we forced the new Pope to come live in our country under our rules and do our bidding? Remember that time? Why would you say that? Why would you say that unless you were like threatening them? The Vatican was apparently so alarmed by this conversation that they have pulled Pope Leo off attending any America 250 events, and he is not planning to come to the United States at all anytime soon. Now, the Pentagon is saying it wasn't that bad. The Catholics are being babies. But you wouldn't say those things. You wouldn't say, first, the American military can do whatever it wants, wherever it wants in the world, and the Catholic Church better choose a side, and then bring up this period in time when the French monarch killed the Pope and then forced the new Pope to come live in his country under his rules. You guys! You guys!
Yo, this is wild. MAGA Catholics, it's at the point where you're going to have to choose between your faith and Donald Trump, and I bet I know which one you're going to pick, because the Trump administration is now threatening the Pope seemingly with physical violence, so much so that the Pope is no longer coming to the United States for the 250th anniversary celebrations. That's how seriously they're taking this threat. And what did the Pope dare to do? Read scripture. Yeah. You know what they hate more than us lefties? Their own scripture, and being reminded of their heretical, blasphemous ways. He dared read out of Isaiah. And this pissed off the Trump administration so much that they summoned the Vatican ambassador to the United States and threatened him. Said the United States has the military power to do whatever it wants, so the Catholic Church better side with the US. Then reminded him of the Avignon papacy, which in my eyes is nothing short of a physical threat. The Avignon papacy came about because the French crown basically in 1309 murdered the then Pope, which I believe was Boniface, and then moved the seat of the Catholic Church to Avignon, hence the name Avignon papacy. 7 successive popes then ruled from Avignon. Basically leads to the Western Schism down the road, but still, what could that possibly mean? Other than, hey, remember, sometimes popes get murdered and the papacy itself moves to a new location. Is that what you're saying? You're going to take out the Pope and move the papacy to the United States? Again, he's no longer coming to his country of origin, the United States, for the 250th anniversary. Fucking wild. They're comfortable just threatening global religious leaders. I guess taking out one wasn't enough, huh? But I bet you Catholics are going to come up with some type of reason, at least the MAGA Catholics, as to why their Pope is the one in the wrong for reading scripture. Fucking wild.
Donald Trump's presidency has always relied on the same primitive superstition that if you sound violent enough, the world will flinch, fold, and call it deal-making. That superstition finally collided with the one institution on earth that does not need Trump's approval to claim moral authority. When Trump escalated his Iran brinkmanship into annihilation rhetoric, warning that a whole civilization will die tonight, Pope Leo XIV did something the Trump movement is not built to handle. He named the threat for what it was, condemned it publicly as truly unacceptable, and framed it as a violation of the moral and legal boundaries that are supposed to restrain state violence. That wasn't a feel-good sermon. It was a strategic rebuke delivered in the language Trump fears most: legitimacy. Not the legitimacy you buy with a press conference, not the legitimacy you simulate with flags and applause lines, but the kind that survives because it speaks to first principles, human dignity, civilian protection, the horror of collective punishment, and the basic truth that power is not righteousness. Pope Leo's condemnation landed precisely because it punctured Trump's favorite illusion that he can threaten mass suffering and still pose as the protector of the innocent. And then came the second shock to the Trump system. Leo didn't back down, even after the 2-week ceasefire announcement, praised by the Pope as a step in the right direction because negotiations are the only path to peace. Leo's posture didn't become grateful, deferential, or starstruck. He treated the ceasefire as a fragile opening, not a coronation of Trump's greatness. That's what makes this moment so politically important. Trump can bully a cable network. He can browbeat a Republican senator. He can cow a corporate executive. But he cannot bully a papacy that has already decided the Trump model war as spectacle, violence as leverage, domination as virtue is morally bankrupt. Your transcript frames Pope Leo XIV as furious not only about Trump's Iran rhetoric, but about a broader Trump MAGA worldview that tries to replace diplomacy with force and treats religion as a prop for militarism. It also describes reporting that the Trump Pentagon held a tense January meeting with Cardinal Christophe Pierre, then the Vatican's nuncio, ambassador of the United States, and that the conversation included ominous historical references, specifically the Avignon papacy, as part of a message about American might and the need for the church to take sides. That core account is now widely circulating and has been covered by outlets describing it as originating with the free press, with the Pentagon disputing the most threatening characterization.
Pentagon threatened the Pope after he criticized Trump. And it went over so bad that Pope Leo changed his plans to travel to the US. Days after the Pope delivered his State of the World speech, Undersecretary of the Defense for Policy Elbridge Coley summoned Cardinal Christophe Pierre, the Vatican's US representative, to a closed-door Pentagon meeting for a bitter lecture. The United States, Colby said, according to a new report by the Free Press, quote, has the military power to do whatever it wants in the world. The Catholic Church had better take its side. One U.S. official present at the meeting brought up the Avignon papacy, a period in the 14th century in which the French monarchy bent the Catholic Church into submission, ordering an attack on Pope Boniface VIII that led to his downfall and subsequent death, and forcing the papacy to relocate from Rome to Avignon, a region inside France. Defense Secretary Pete Kegsbreth and other top Pentagon officials were particularly aggrieved by portions of Leo's January 9 speech, in which the Pope argued that a, quote, diplomacy that promotes dialogue and seeks consensus among all parties is being replaced by a diplomacy based on force, and that, quote, a war is back in vogue and a zeal for war is spreading. Pope's address was dissected line by line and interpreted as a hostile message towards the administration, reported letters from Leo Substack writer Christopher Hale. But this intimidation tactic is the first of its kind ever made by American officials to the Catholic Church. There are no public records of any previous meetings between the Vatican and the U.S. officials at the Pentagon, let alone an instance in which the world powers suggested that it could force the Bishop of Rome into captivity. The Vatican was so alarmed that it canceled the Pope's trip to the U.S., saying, quote, many in the Vatican saw the Pentagon's reference to an Avignon papacy as a threat to use military force against the Holy See. So a question to you MAGA Catholics out there. How does this all make you feel?
President of the United States making ridiculous, over-the-top threats. The Pope spoke out. And of course, the Pope speaking out has then got parts of MAGA world so angry that they're like trying to threaten the Vatican. This president can't handle criticism to the point that he's going to declare war on the Vatican. And I have to say, politically, that's incredibly risky. If you wanted to just look at swing states by religion, there's a lot of Catholics in Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, and Michigan. So I'm not sure picking a fight with the Pope, the first American Pope, who frankly is the most interesting and likable Pope we've had ever, as far as Americans are concerned. My God, he's a Chicago White Sox fan. You want to talk about devotion? That's devotion.
You know, folks, I got to be honest with you. I read a headline the other day and I said to myself, never in my lifetime would I have ever dreamed I would read a headline like that. It was that the Pentagon had threatened the Pope. And I said, what in the hell kind of world we're living in? And then I realized we're living in Donald Trump's America. And whenever you read a headline and you say to yourself, well, that could possibly be satire, it doesn't have to be satire anymore, because Donald Trump's world is like you're on a never-ending movie of idiocracy. It's like the movie never stops. It's like you're sitting there trying to hit stop. Okay, I've had enough of this movie. It was good. It was funny. Ha, ha, ha. And it just keeps going and going and going. And why would the Pentagon threaten the Pope? Why would the Pope now say he's probably not going to visit? Well, because the Pope criticized Donald Trump and his war. That's the world that we're living in, where we now have a Pope that is calling out the president's war and the president is just returning it with threats. I mean, again, when you say to yourself that I can't believe this is real, just always remember, in Donald Trump's America, it can be real.
In English, I would simply say, once again, what I said in the Urbi et Orbi message on Sunday, asking all people of goodwill to search always for peace and not violence, to reject war, especially a war which many people have said is an unjust war, which is continuing to escalate, and which is not resolving anything. In fact, we have a worldwide economic crisis, energy crisis, situation in the Middle East of great instability, which is only provoking more hatred throughout the world. So come back to the table. Let's talk. Let's look for solutions in a peaceful way. And let's remember, especially the innocent, children, the elderly, the sick, so many people who have already become or will become victims of this continued warfare. to remind all that attacks on civilian infrastructure is against international law, but that it is also a sign of the hatred, the division, the destruction that the human being is capable of. And we all want to work for peace. People want peace. I would invite the citizens of all the countries involved to contact the authorities, political leaders, congressmen, to ask them, tell them to work for peace and to reject war always. Thank you very much.
You know, everyone that knows me knows that I am no fan of organized religion. I never have been, and I've never really been the biggest fan of the Pope. But everything he said right there was reasonable. Everything he said right there is something that everyone should listen to, regardless of what you think about religion or regardless of what you think of the Catholic Church. It should give anyone pause and say, yeah, we definitely need to listen to those words. Those words make perfect sense. But in Donald Trump's America, that will cause him to lash out. And that's because we have got a lunatic, I truly do believe, a sadistic president at the moment who does not give a damn about religion and sure doesn't give a damn
Okay, so Donald Trump, I think, if this man had any humbleness in him, he would take a step back and he would just stop. He really need to get out of the media for a while. I think that him staying in the media has, not that America had the best reputation, they didn't. But I think now that Donald Trump has been all in the media, lying all in the media, it just looks bad. So now you pretty much threaten the Pope. That looks even worse. I think this is just not going to do any good for America at this point. I don't think he can turn the bad reputation he has, he took part in giving this country since the war. But, you know, the Catholic Church we know have been really a rotten church, probably one of the worst. And Donald Trump, wow. I mean, I've heard of a lot of things, but threatening the Pope, yeah, that's a whole new low right there. Oh well, y'all. I will see you at 1:45. We have the lesson coming up, the Bible study. And then I have one more live coming up. So hopefully I will see you then. Y'all stay prayed up because the times we are in, it is just crazy out here. And I think even, just talking to some of the people around me, you can tell the feel in the air is definitely different. And you can look at many of these folks, they can tell things are changing and they can't do nothing about it. They can't do a thing. It's all in the hands of the Heavenly Father now. So, y'all, have a wonderful afternoon, and I will see you at 1:45. Shalom, family.